He thought his rank made him untouchable, until he took the wrong woman to court and was shocked. Welcome back to Meaningful Stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and start the story right now. The night was a heavy shroud, cloaking the stretch of highway just outside Birmingham, Alabama, in an eerie stillness. It was March 12, 2025, the clock ticking past 11 p.m. The kind of hour where the world seemed to hold its breath. The road gleamed wet under flickering streetlights, their amber glow dancing like restless spirits across the asphalt. Only a handful of cars sliced through the darkness, their headlights slashing brief trails before vanishing into the void. Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson gripped the wheel of her car, her fingers drumming a restless beat against the leather. An old jazz tune hummed low through the speakers, its smoky notes curling around her like a whispered secret. She'd been driving for nearly 2 hours, clad in a simple black sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back tight, unassuming, invisible, or so she thought. Then, a flash of menace erupted in her rearview mirror. Red and blue lights blazed to life, slicing through the night like a predator's eyes, closing in fast. Her stomach tightened, not from fear. No, she'd faced worse than this, but from the bone-deep weariness of knowing exactly what was coming. She flicked on her signal, eased into the right lane, and guided her car onto the gravel-strewn shoulder with a crunch that echoed in the silence. The engine hushed to a stop. Renee took a slow, deliberate breath, her hands resting steady on the wheel. Visible, unthreatening, she'd been forged in the fire of military discipline, knew the unspoken rules of survival in moments like these. Behind her, a white patrol car screeched to a halt, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. The door creaked open, and out stepped the hunter, Officer Daniel Briggs. His heavy boots scraped the asphalt with a slow, deliberate swagger, each step a declaration of dominance. One hand rested on his belt, the other wielded a flashlight that snapped on with a harsh click, its beam cutting through the night to pin her in its glare. She tilted her head just enough to catch his reflection in the side mirror. His badge glinted. The name, Briggs, etched in cold metal. License and registration, he barked, voice flat and sharp. No greeting, no pretense, just the impatient growl of a man used to being obeyed. Renee met his gaze in the mirror, her eyes steady as steel, then reached, slowly, deliberately, into the glove compartment. Paper rustled as she pulled out her documents. Was I speeding, officer? She asked, her voice a calm ripple across the tension. Briggs didn't answer. He snatched the papers from her hand, holding them just beyond her reach as his flashlight swept over her car. Probing, searching, tail lights out, he finally grunted, the words dripping with dismissal. She frowned, a spark of defiance igniting. That can't be right. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. You arguing with me? The air thickened, a silent storm brewing in the space between them. Renee felt it, the shift. The unspoken challenge where power flexed its muscles and demanded submission. She'd faced this before, in briefing rooms, on foreign soil, in drills designed to steel her against the world's ugliness. She knew the game, knew better than to ignite the fuse, but she also knew her ground. I'm just saying, she replied, voice smooth as a blade. My taillights were checked a few weeks ago. If there's an issue, I'll get it fixed. His response came like a thunderclap. Step out of the car. The order sliced through her words, leaving no room for reason. Renee exhaled, sharp and slow, her eyes flicking to the empty road ahead. No witnesses, no backup. Her fingers tapped the wheel once. A final beat, then slid to the door handle. Mind telling me why? She asked. Calm but edged. Briggs tilted his head, a smirk curling his lips like a snake uncoiling. Because I said so. The words hung there, heavy with menace, daring her to defy him. She let them linger, then unbuckled her seatbelt with a soft click and pushed the door open. The night air hit her like a slap, cool, sharp, alive. She stepped onto the pavement, her stance relaxed but coiled. A soldier's poise. She wasn't here to fight, but she'd be damned if she'd bow. Briggs took a step back, his eyes raking over her, sizing her up like prey. Turn around, hands on the car, he snapped. She paused, the air crackling. For what reason? His smirk vanished, replaced by a flash of something darker, annoyance. Maybe rage. You resisting? He growled. Closing the gap, Renee held her ground, unflinching. No, I'm asking a question. His jaw twitched, a flicker of amusement warring with fury. Then, without warning, he lunged for his radio. "We got a non-compliant driver here," he muttered into it, his voice a low snarl. "Louder now. Turn around." Her pulse kicked up, but her face remained a mask. "Officer, I need you to understand something," she said, her tone low, lethal. "I know exactly what I'm allowed to do, and what you can't." That hit him like a spark to dry grass. His hand shot out, snagging her wrist. "You're under arrest," he spat, yanking out his cuffs. Renee sidestepped, smooth as a shadow, just out of his grasp. "Under arrest for what?" she shot back. "For obstructing an officer," he snarled, lunging again. She could have fought, her training screamed for it, but she wasn't reckless. "Not here, not now." With a sharp breath, she turned, placing her hands on the car's cool roof. Briggs pounced, wrenching her arms back, the cuffs biting into her wrists with vicious intent. He shoved her toward his patrol car, a low chuckle rumbling in his throat. "Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing." But he didn't, not even close. The night swallowed them as he slammed her into the backseat. The door crashing shut like a guillotine. Renee sat still, wrists burning, her breath steady as a drumbeat. Outside, Briggs strutted back to his car, oblivious to the storm he'd just unleashed. The patrol car's backseat was a coffin of hard plastic, its edges biting into Renee Dawson's spine as the door slammed shut with a metallic clang that reverberated through the night. Her wrists screamed against the cuffs, the steel rings gnawing into her flesh, too tight. Deliberately so, a petty tyrant's signature. She sat motionless, her breath a slow, deliberate rhythm, a soldier's mantra keeping the chaos at bay. Through the smudged partition, her reflection stared back, calm, unyielding, a mask forged in combat zones far deadlier than this. But beneath it, a fire simmered, stoked by the audacity of the man who dared to cage her. Outside, Daniel Briggs strutted back to his driver's seat, his silhouette a hulking shadow against the red-blue pulse of his cruiser's lights. He muttered into his radio, words lost to the static, his voice a low growl of triumph. The night pressed in, thick and oppressive, the only sound the faint hum of the highway fading into oblivion. Minutes crawled by, 5, then 10, each one a test of her resolve. She shifted, testing the cuffs, they bit deeper. A cruel reminder of Briggs' petty vengeance. Her military training kicked in, control the breath, control the mind. She'd endured desert nights with sand in her lungs, interrogations where silence was her shield. This was a game he thought he'd already won. The driver's door yanked open with a groan, and Briggs slid in, whistling a tuneless, mocking melody. He snapped his seatbelt across his chest with a smug flourish. Well, he drawled, throwing the car into gear. The engine roared to life, lurching them back onto the road, the flashing lights painting the asphalt in streaks of blood and ice. "Let's take a little ride." Renee didn't flinch, didn't speak. He wanted a reaction, fear, submission, but she'd give him nothing. The station loomed ahead, a squat, gray fortress squatting off the main drag, its windows dark save for a few sickly flickers of fluorescent light. Briggs broke the silence, his voice oozing with condescension. "You know, most people just keep their mouths shut when I tell them to step out." Renee's nostrils flared, a sharp exhale her only reply. "And most officers don't arrest people for asking a question." She shot back, her words a quiet blade slipped between his ribs. He laughed, a harsh, grating bark, shaking his head. "Lady, you must really think you're somebody." She met his gaze through the partition-scratched glass. "I don't think," she said, voice low and lethal. "I know." His knuckles whitened around the wheel, a crack in his smug facade. But he buried it fast. "You military?" he asked, the question laced with a sneer. She didn't answer. "Yeah, I figured." He pressed on, smirking. "That attitude, above the law. Huh? Bet you thought I'd back off if you flexed that." Silence was her weapon now. Sharp and unyielding, he clicked his tongue, feigning pity. "Shame. If you'd just played nice, we could have skipped all this." Her jaw tightened, his fault, twisted into her burden. The gall of it burned, but she swallowed the ember. The station's lot stretched before them, barren under the sodium glow, a graveyard for the night shift. Briggs killed the engine with a flick of his wrist and twisted to face her through the glass. "Gotta say," he murmured, his smirk a venomous slash. "I love when they make it easy." Before she could carve a reply, he was out, slamming his door with a boom that rattled the frame. Her door flew open a heartbeat later, and he loomed there, a dark tower of arrogance. "Let's go," he barked, yanking her out. The cuffs tore at her wrists as she stepped into the chill. Her head high, unbroken, he marched her inside, past a bleary-eyed desk sergeant who barely glanced up from his coffee-stained blotter, and into the holding area, a dank pit reeking of stale sweat and despair. A metal bench gleamed cold against the wall, a steel cell door yawning beyond it like a hungry maw. Briggs uncuffed her with a rough twist, just long enough for the booking ritual, fingerprints smudged onto a pad. A mug shot snapped under harsh light. The other officers shuffled through the motions, their indifference a silent accomplice to his reign. Then he seized her wrist again, dragging her toward the cell. "Think you're smart, huh?" he hissed, his breath hot against the bars as he shoved her inside. Renee caught herself mid-stumble, spinning to face him. "I don't have to think," she said, her voice a quiet thunderclap. His grip faltered, her defiance a splinter under his skin. "Enjoy your stay," he sneered, tapping the bars with a mocking rhythm as they slid shut with a final echoing click. He turned and vanished, leaving her alone in the flickering gloom. She sank onto the bench, the metal's chill seeping through her jeans, grounding her. One night, that's all it would take. Briggs thought he'd trapped her, broken her. He had no idea the storm he'd caged. Footsteps thudded back, his unmistakable, heavy with that same swagger. He reappeared, arms crossed, smirk plastered like a war trophy. "Comfy?" She didn't blink. He leaned closer, the bars casting jagged shadows across his face. "If you'd just played along, you wouldn't be here." A slow smile curled her lips, sharp as a blade. "Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be." His smirk flickered, a shadow of doubt creeping in. Then, a voice cut through, a younger officer, clipboard trembling in his hands. Sergeant, we got a call." Briggs waved him off, but the kid persisted. "I think you need to see this." The air shifted, electric. Renee sat back, listening as whispers of "lawyer" and "higher up" drifted through the bars. Briggs stormed off, his bravado cracking like thin ice. She exhaled, steady and sure. It wouldn't be long now. He'd locked her in, but she'd just turned the key on him. Morning clawed its way through the courthouse's narrow windows, spilling jagged streaks of light across the polished floors like spilled blood frozen in time. The air was crisp, biting, a cold that sank into your bones if you dared linger too long. Renee Dawson stood beside the defendant's table, a pillar of quiet fury wrapped in a tailored navy blazer, her blouse crisp and unyielding. No cuffs marred her wrists now, no orange jumpsuit to strip her dignity, just an aura of steel. Her eyes sharp as a hawk's. Cutting through the room, beside her, Carla Whitman, her attorney, moved like a predator in her own right, flipping through papers with lethal precision, her every gesture a silent promise of ruin. The heavy wooden doors groaned open, and Daniel Briggs strode in, shoulders squared, chin tilted high, still clinging to the illusion he owned this battlefield. But a shadow flickered in his step, a crack in his armor he couldn't hide. Renee caught his gaze, he flinched away. "Good." The room hushed as Judge Alan Kirkland swept in, his robes billowing like a storm cloud. An older man with a face carved from weariness. He adjusted his glasses with a sigh that echoed through the silence, settling into his perch with the weight of inevitability. "All right," he rasped, voice gravelly. "Let's get to it." The prosecutor, a wiry man with hair combed into submission, stepped forward, clearing his throat like a gunshot. "Your Honor, we contend that Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson was unlawfully detained without cause. Furthermore, evidence reveals a festering pattern of misconduct by the arresting officer, Sergeant Daniel Briggs." A murmur rippled through the gallery, a wave of whispers crashing against the walls. Briggs shifted in his seat, his jaw a clenched fist, his smugness teetering. Kirkland's gaze skewered him over the rims of his glasses. "Sergeant Briggs, care to explain?" Briggs leaned forward, throat bobbing as he forced a cough. "Your Honor, the defendant was incooperative during a routine stop," the prosecutor pounced, cutting him off like a blade through silk. "Incooperative?" He spun, snatching a document from the table. brandishing it like a loaded gun. Lieutenant Commander Dawson, Naval Academy graduate. Decorated officer. A record gleaming with commendations, no crimes. No citations. Are you telling me this woman, this soldier, posed such a threat over a broken tail light that you had to slap cuffs on her? Briggs' mouth opened, then snapped shut, the silence a noose tightening around his neck. The prosecutor pressed his attack, flipping pages with a flourish. And then there's this, an internal review showing your traffic stops skew heavily toward black drivers. Care to enlighten us, Sergeant? The murmurs swelled into a roar, a tide of outrage crashing over the room. Briggs' face darkened, a storm brewing behind his eyes. Kirkland set his file down with a thud, the sound a gavel before the strike. Sergeant, I don't like what I'm hearing. Briggs crossed his arms, defiance flaring. She resisted. The prosecutor arched a brow, voice dripping with scorn. The body cam says otherwise. The air snapped taut, electric with anticipation. Briggs' eyes darted to the judge, desperation seeping through his mask. I followed procedure. Kirkland wasn't having it. Play the footage, he ordered, his tone a quiet thunderclap. The bailiff moved, and a screen descended at the room's front like a guillotine blade. The video flickered to life, Briggs barking commands. Renee's voice a steady defiance. The cuffs slamming on with smug brutality. Renee didn't turn to watch, she lived it, breathed it, felt the metal bite. The room fell deathly still as the screen went dark. Every eye a weight pressing down on Briggs. He squirmed, sweat beading at his temple. Kirkland leaned forward, fingers steepled like a judge of fate. Sergeant Briggs, you violated protocol. You executed an unlawful arrest. And you lied in your report. Briggs opened his mouth, a choked protest dying on his lips as the judge barreled on. The charges against Lieutenant Commander Dawson are dismissed. The gavel cracked down, a gunshot of finality that shattered the tension like glass. And I'm ordering an internal investigation into your conduct. Sergeant, step carefully. The room erupted, a chaos of gasps and rustling papers. Briggs looked like he'd been gutted, his face a mask of red fury. Fists clenched so tight his knuckles blanched. Renee exhaled, slow and controlled, a victor's breath. She'd never doubted this moment. As she gathered her things, her gaze flicked to Briggs one last time. Their eyes locked, a silent war. No words needed. He'd swung his power like a club. But now it was his reputation bleeding out on the floor. The courtroom doors banged shut behind him as he stormed off, his heavy boots a fading echo of a man unraveling. Renee stepped into the light, unbroken, unshaken, the weight of justice a quiet fire in her chest. This wasn't the end, not yet, but it was the beginning of his fall. Daniel Briggs stormed out of the courthouse, his heavy boots pounding the polished hallway like war drums echoing through a crumbling empire. The air buzzed with the sting of defeat, thick with the weight of eyes boring into him, court staff whispering behind cupped hands, officers averting their gazes, reporters circling like vultures scenting blood. His face was a furnace, flushed red with fury, his jaw locked tight enough to crack teeth. For years, he'd strode into rooms like a king, wielding his badge as a scepter, commanding fear or obedience with a flick of his wrist. Now, that power slipped through his fingers like sand, leaving only the bitter grit of humiliation. The hallway stretched endless before him, its gleaming tiles reflecting his distorted silhouette, a man unraveling, step by ragged step. Then, a voice sliced through the clamor, sharp as a blade. Sergeant Briggs. He froze, boots squeaking against the floor, and turned. Chief Eldon Baker stood there, arms crossed, his broad frame a wall of quiet authority. 30 years on the force had etched lines into his face, a map of battles won and lost, and his unreadable stare pinned Briggs like a moth to a board. With a curt nod, Baker jerked his head toward a private office. Inside, Briggs straightened, chest puffing with defiance, but followed, each step a march to the gallows. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing them in a tomb of stale air and flickering fluorescent light. Baker's voice dropped, low and lethal. What the hell were you thinking? Briggs exhaled, a sharp hiss through his nose. I was doing my job. Your job? Baker's scoff was a whip crack. Cutting him off, he flung a file onto the desk. Its thud a gunshot in the silence. Paper spilled free, arrest logs, complaints, a damning ledger of his sins. This isn't a job well done. Briggs. It's a body cam showing you out of line. An arrest history screaming bias. And you didn't even know who you were tangling with. Briggs' nostrils flared, his voice a snarl. What's that got to do with anything? Baker leaned forward, his shadow swallowing the desk. Everything. You didn't pull over some nobody. You locked up a high-ranking Navy officer. A woman with a record cleaner than your badge ever was. Did you think this would just vanish? Briggs' gaze darted away, teeth grinding. She was disrespectful, she questioned you. Baker snapped, his words a cold blade. That's not a crime. But this? He jabbed a finger at the file. This is. The room pulsed with tension. The walls closing in. Briggs swallowed, his bravado fraying like cheap thread. People like that. Baker's eyes narrowed. A storm brewing. People like what? Silence crashed down, heavy and accusing. Briggs' lips twitched, but no words came. Baker sighed, rubbing his forehead as if the weight of this mess physically pained him. The DA's digging into every case you've touched in the last 5 years. You've been flagged for racial profiling, hard evidence. Not rumors. This department won't sink to shield you. Briggs' stomach twisted, a sick lurch as the ground shifted beneath him. What's that mean? He rasped. Baker straightened, his voice ice. You're suspended. Effective now. Internal Affairs is on your tail. And if they find what I think they will, your career's a corpse. The words slammed into Briggs like a fist. His face burning, his world splintering in real time. This is bullshit, don't. Baker cut in, hand raised, his tone a guillotine's edge. Pack your desk. And if I were you, I'd lawyer up fast. Briggs stood there, fists balled at his sides. Breath ragged, the air tasted of ash, his reign, his armor, his untouchable myth, all torched to cinders. For the first time, he felt the chill of vulnerability, the sting of a spotlight he couldn't control. Baker turned away, dismissing him without a glance, and Briggs stumbled out, the door banging shut like a coffin lid. His footsteps echoed down the hall, slower now, hollow, a king dethroned, marching into the abyss of his own making. The reckoning had begun, and there was no badge left to hide behind. The afternoon air crackled with the scent of fresh rain as Renee Dawson stepped out of the cafe. The door's chime a faint echo swallowed by the city's hum. Steam curled from her coffee cup, a fragile wisp against the steel in her spine. The weight of the past 24 hours should have clung to her like damp earth. But she shed it with every steady step, her head high, her stride a quiet thunder. Her phone buzzed, a sharp jolt in her pocket, and the screen glowed with news. Briggs suspended. Facing charges. A slow sip burned her tongue, the bitter heat of fitting toast. Good. Across town, headlines blazed. Navy officer wrongfully arrested. Cop's career in ashes, the footage gone viral. A wildfire she'd ignited. She'd known it from the moment she'd faced Briggs' sneer on that rain-slicked highway. This wasn't just her fight. It was a reckoning. Her phone buzzed again, insistent, a familiar number flashing. She sighed, then answered, the voice on the line cutting through like a beacon. Lieutenant Commander. Her captain greeted, his tone steady as a ship's keel. I assume you've seen the news? I have, she replied, her reflection flickering in a storefront window. No cracks. No surrender. Just the unbroken gaze of a warrior. And how are you feeling? He pressed. She watched a bus rumble past, its exhaust a gray ghost in the air. Like I did exactly what I had to. A pause. Then his voice softened, a rare crack in his armor. That's what I figured you'd say. Another beat. The Department of Defense is watching. They might want you to speak. Your case is a flare in the dark. Renee's breath hitched, not from surprise but from the weight of it. I'm not here to be a headline, she said, her voice a low simmer. You already are, he countered, unrelenting. This isn't just about you, it's a mirror to something rotten. Something bigger. She knew it, had always known. Briggs wasn't a lone wolf, he was a cog in a machine oiled by years of silence. A system that let men like him thrive unchecked. This was for the shadows, the countless others who'd faced his cuffs or worse. Without her rank, her voice, her fight, she leaned against a streetlight, its cold metal a grounding pulse. Watching the traffic churn. This isn't the first time, she murmured, and it won't be the last. No, he agreed, but it's the first time Briggs is bleeding for it, because you didn't bend. Her eyes drifted shut, his words a spark igniting the embers she'd carried since that night, the cuffs biting. The cell's chill. The smug tilt of Briggs' smirk. She hadn't flinched then, and she wouldn't now. The captain cleared his throat, snapping her back. One more thing, the mayor's office might call. They want to pin a medal on you. Commend your grace under fire. A smirk tugged at her lips, sharp and wry. That's ironic. He chuckled. A rare sound. You gonna take it? She tilted her head, the city's pulse thrumming around her. I'll think about it. The call ended with a click, her phone slipping back into her pocket like a loaded gun holstered. Across the street, a mother tugged her young son along, his laughter a bright thread weaving through the gray. His small hand clutched hers, his joy a defiant flare against the world's shadows. Renee watched, her chest tightening, not with pain, but purpose. She'd fought for herself, yes, but also for him, for every black child who deserved a future where badges weren't weapons. The wind whipped past, carrying the damp promise of more rain, and she stepped forward, boots striking the pavement with resolve. Her phone stayed silent now, but the air thrummed with something electric. Victory. Yes, but also a call unanswered. This wasn't over. Briggs was down, his empire of arrogance toppled, but the machine he'd served still churned. She'd struck a blow, lit a fuse, and the flames were spreading. Power unchecked was a beast, and she'd stared it down, unblinking. Her steps quickened, a soldier's march, her purpose a blade honed sharp. This fight was never just hers, it was theirs. The voiceless, the unseen, and as the city stretched before her, alive and restless, she knew. Real change wasn't a gift from above. It was forged in the fire of those who refused to break. Who demanded the world listen? She'd started a conversation, one that wouldn't be silenced. Thank you for accompanying us in today's story. See you again in the next videos. Hello and see you again.